Now, last week, President Obama made some executive decisions on gun control, signing about 23 different executive orders into law in order to strengthen things like background checks and close things like the gun show loophole. Now, of course, a lot of conservative pundits decried absolute government tyranny. They're coming for our guns, they're taking our guns. Well, the truth is, of course, that all this does is it makes no new laws. It only really strengthens existing laws, which is something that conservatives, of course, have been calling for. Now, there was a recent poll that asked, how do the American people feel about this background check bills? And the results were interesting. Now, this was, of course, from a new CNN ORC poll done after the executive actions, and they basically show that the American people are in support. So let's break it down. Now, this poll says that 67% of Americans surveyed said that they favor the changes President Obama had announced. Now, about 32%, of course, oppose any of these changes. These are the people that are like, no, guns everywhere. I want to open carry at Chipotle's, because you never know when I'm going to get attacked by a minority at Chipotle's. Irony much. Okay. So these are the, open carry people that don't think that we should have any sort of gun regulation. These are your gun nuts. Okay. Now, most Americans don't fall into that. Even if you're a gun owner, most likely you support some sort of requirements. You don't think that everybody should have a gun. You think that responsible, law-abiding American citizens should have a gun if they choose to have one. Okay, yeah, I'm fine with that. However, this 32%, not exactly there. Now, also, some of the people polled said that these executive actions, they don't really go far enough. But I'll get into that later. Now, this support for these executive actions, designed to expand background checks to cover more gun purchases, made online or on gun shows, and to make it easier for the FBI to complete background checks efficiently, well, these results come across party lines. Unsurprisingly, most Democrats, 85%, support this. A majority of independents as well, 65%, and surprisingly enough, a majority of Republicans, although slim, 51% are in favor of these measures. Now, majorities back the measures across almost all demographic groups. And also, 57% of gun owners and 56% of rural residents say, yes, background checks, these make sense. We will support them. Now, interestingly enough, those who strongly favor these changes also outnumber those who are strongly opposed by about a 2-to-1 margin. 41% they say that they are strongly in favor of these new executive actions, while only 21% are strongly opposed. So now we get into where people disagree with the actions, right? Well, it turns out that even though people support these actions, a lot of people are unconvinced that it's going to do a whole lot. In fact, almost 6 in 10 say that these measures will not be effective in reducing the amount and number of gun-related deaths in the United States. Now, that sentiment is actually felt strongly among gun owners, who, even though a majority of gun owners say, yeah, I support these, they also say that, look, even though I support these, that doesn't mean that it's going to reduce the amounts of gun deaths in America. Now, to that I say, you're absolutely right. This might help certain people not get a hold of a gun as easily as they would before. Now, it is something, but in order to really crack down on gun deaths, something else has to be done. Now, that's something, of course, a lot of people are unwilling to do. I've said before, America has a math problem. We have over 300 million guns in circulation. We're literally drowning in an ocean of guns. Now, we're not going to do anything about it. So, measures like this, which are nice, which will help a little bit, overall, I don't really see it doing a whole lot in the trend. But nonetheless, these are actions that won't impact your rights as a gun owner, and it might help a little bit. It's sort of a net positive, even if it's not really going to move the needle on gun violence all that much. Now, Once again, this breaks down by party lines. Democrats are more optimistic about the changes. 67% say that they will be effective, while Republicans skeptical, with 78% saying that they will not work. Now, also, they broke it down by gender. Women, who are about as half as likely as men to be gun owners, are about evenly split on the question. 47% say they will be effective, 50% say not so much. While men mostly say that they will not work, 64% versus 34% who say that they would be effective in, of course, reducing gun violence. Now, among those who actually support this overall, these changes, right, 57% say that they will be effective in reducing the number of gun-related deaths in the United States, while that, of course, drops to about 7% among those who are opposed. Now, also, what's interesting is that President Obama is actually getting higher marks now for his handling of gun policy after this than he was getting before. In fact, according to the poll, his 53% actually said that they disapprove of Obama's handling of gun policy. That's actually up than what it used to be. Now, it's still negative, but more people are starting to approve. So he actually does something on gun control, which before what he had done is actually expand gun rights. He allowed people to carry in Amtrak trains and in public parks. Now when he actually does something about background checks, which 90% of the American people support, he gets a bump up. Now it's not enough to lift him from the negatives, but once again, there are limits to presidential power. These executive actions, they're not creating new laws. It actually just strengthened and enforced existing law. Which ironically, Republicans scream, why aren't you enforcing the laws? Why do you gotta make new laws? Why aren't you enforcing the laws we already have? Dude, he fucking did that. He fucking did it. And now you're bitching about that too. It's crazy, but you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And that is, of course, the role that Obama is playing at this point. No matter what you do, you're fucked. Welcome to politics. Anyway, more stuff. Now, actually, on that, it's actually his approval when it comes to handling the gun issues has actually climbed about 8 points since late December. And it's primarily among Democrats who actually say, good, you're finally doing something. You weren't doing anything before. Now you're actually doing something. Well, once again, there are limits to a president's power. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to get something through Congress. In fact, he had urged Congress to do something about it, and they wouldn't take it up. 90% of the American people support these measures. However, the Republicans, they shut it down. Why? Because they're afraid of the NRA. They're afraid of the gun lobby. So they didn't do anything. All right. Now, here's another interesting part of this poll. Now, a lot of people are actually opposed to his use of executive actions. 54% of Americans opposed the use of executive actions in doing this, while just 44% support that mode of action. Now, that's, once again, that's very interesting. When you break it down by party, of course, 78% of Democrats say, yeah, you used executive action, I'm cool with it. While 79% of Republicans oppose it. And independents also oppose the move by 61%. So now you look at this, most of Americans agree that these are good ideas. However, they're not going to do much, according to the American public, and we don't like the way that you did it. Basically, what that says to me is that, look, we would rather you have went through Congress and done something a little bit more comprehensive. Basically, what they're saying is that Congress, you're not doing your job. You're not doing your job. You should be doing these laws. It shouldn't be up to the president to do executive actions that, while good, will not actually solve the underlying issue of gun violence. It will do something to help, but it won't solve the problem. And it should have been Congress's job. That's what it says to me. It says that Congress, the Republicans in Congress, and some of the Democrats as well, who vote against these this common sense gun reform legislation, are dropping the ball, and they're dropping the ball on purpose. They're not taking up this legislation that they should, that the American people support, because they're bought by the gun lobby. That's sort of the issue that I see here. And if we want to do something on gun violence, we have to remove the outsized influence of groups like the NRA. You have to do something about lobbying, you have to do something about money in politics, and also you have to debunk the bullshit spread by some certain media outlets that say that things like this, that actions like this are unconstitutional. They're not. And also they say that actions like this are going to disarm you. They're going to take guns away from law-abiding citizens. That's not true. That's bullshit. And I wouldn't be surprised that some of the people that were polled in the survey on the Republican side had been told this misinformation over and over again, and that's why they oppose this. I don't like the idea that Barack Obama had to go through executive order. I think this should have been a job for the Congress. But they didn't want to do their job, and the president had to do something, and he had to do something within the scope of his authority. That's just my opinion on it. But overall, a very interesting breakdown. It is good to see that most Americans do support doing something about the problem, even if they don't agree that it will do much in the way of curbing gun violence, or, of course, using executive orders to get there. But at least we've made some progress. And I guess that's better than nothing.